Chapter 1. Ashes of the Bloom, we survived the bloom. But we did not survive each other. At first, it seemed the world had stabilized. The Meridian engine quieted. The constant echo pulsed gently overhead, no longer a rupture, but a rhythm. The world exhaled, but it did not heal. Scene: the monument rupture. In what was once the city of Vyrene, people gathered beneath a monument to Lyra and Bishop, two marble figures holding opposite halves of a fractured hourglass. It had been meant as a place of unity. Instead, it became ground zero. A split formed in the statue's base, small at first, then violently wide. Out spilled not magma, but time residue, warped flora from alternate presents, artifacts from lives unlived, and worst of all, eco-thoughts. Voices no one remembered speaking, memories no one claimed. "It's starting again," whispered a child, clutching a blue journal. The journal bore one phrase written 100 times in trembling ink. If she chose not to choose, who did? Scene: Bishop's watch. Bishop sat alone atop a terrace overlooking the scarred city. His reflection had started lagging again, half a second behind his movement. Reality was rewriting itself and beginning to second-guess. He gripped the chipped edge of his seat. "This isn't the bloom," he muttered. "This is the rot left behind." In the sky, the constant echo pulsed unevenly. It wasn't a constellation anymore. It was a wound stitched shut in a hurry. He could feel it pulling like it wanted to remember something it had been forced to forget. Seen Lyra at the archive, Lyra returned to the Vault of Lost. Timeline's a library of unstable truths buried beneath the refracted sea. She came not to reclaim answers, but to look for absence. What hadn't happened? What had tried to? She uncovered new glyphs burned into the archives, sealing fresh ones. Formed after the engine's silence. Memory divides faster than cells. Love doesn't survive exposure to interpretation. A sigil glowed beneath her hand. Not from the bloom, not even from the engine. It was the signature of the Exile. Closing image. Divergence rising in the desert capital of Marikai. A new voice echoed through black glass speakers embedded in alleyways and temples. It spoke in Bishop's voice, but colder, sharper, incomplete. It declared the pattern was a lie. The constant echo is not a gift. It is a weapon. And we must reclaim control. The followers began gathering. Some called themselves the Faithless. Chapter 2. When Echoes Burn. The first casualty of memory is loyalty. Her name was Sina Ree, but in the temples of the Faithless, they called her the Severed Anchor. A child of the bloom, raised in the myths of Lyra and Bishop, taught to kneel before the constant echo and whisper her sins into the sky. But now she was burning her own prayer cloth. Scene: the departure rite. In the shattered city of Vyrene's lower districts, a breakaway sect performed a silent march. Black-veiled, barefooted, each carried a relic made from timeline residue scraps of maps that no longer charted anywhere. Shards of photographs taken of futures that never came true. Senna watched from a shadowed rooftop, her robes half-burnt, her faction sigil torn from her chest. Her former mentor Vel Arkin led the march. His voice echoed with fire. "They gave us silence. So we speak now in flame." Below, a procession set fire to a sculpture of Bishop's face carved in mirrored glass. It screamed when it cracked. Eco-stabilizers began to short out across 3 city blocks. Scene: Senna's choice. Sina escaped down the alley, heartbeat irregular. Temporal dampener pulsing red at her wrist. She reached the threshold of a hidden safe-houser place for eco-refugees who wanted out. A boy met her at the door. 8 years old, one blue eye, one violet. The bloom touched everyone differently. "Were you important before?" he asked. "I used to believe so," she replied. "Now, I just want to be real." Scene: The firebrand broadcast. From the ruins of the broadcast tower, a signal cuts through fractured bandwidth. It's not Lyra's voice. It's not Bishop. It's someone claiming to speak for the original engine. They call for fracture, not unity. They promise liberation through contradiction. Forget the pattern, forget the myth. Every echo is a weapon. Every memory is a wound. Bleed louder. Senna watches as half the room begins chanting in sync. She tightens the temporal brace on her arm and slowly reaches for the pulse disruptor hanging on the wall. Closing image, the ash line. Outside, the streets are marked with soot trails, burn lines left behind by former believers casting off their allegiance in flame. But one symbol refuses to burn. A red thread in the shape of the hourglass. As Senna crushes her echo-eyed tag underfoot, she mutters, "They didn't die for this. They chose something better." And she walks alone into the next war. Chapter 3. The reclamation engine, what we bury in silence, returns louder than screams. Sina rethought she'd escaped at the pull of echo ideology, the scars of mirrored memory. But the war didn't need her faith. It needed her ghost. Scene. Crossing the fringe, she traveled east, past the crimson ash line. Into zones where time still stuttered at crosswalks and laughter echoed before it was spoken. At the edge of the dead city of Halden Vex, she found what she was searching for. A signal. Not just a broadcast, but a pulse. Familiar, mechanical. Reclamation engine. Subsystem 1 detected. Status autonomous. Her implant shuddered. The engine wasn't sleeping anymore. It was multiplying. Seen? Inside the vault. Beneath the fractured earth-glass dome, Sina uncovered Reclamation Subsystem 1. Curled like a metallic fetus in a cradle of broken glyphs and neural mesh. But it didn't activate on proximity. It activated on memory. "State your first divergence," the system said. "I left," she answered. Before the fire started, the engine pulsed once. A panel slid open. Inside, not weaponry, but a seed. A data spore encoded with one directive: integrate dissent. Stabilize belief. It wasn't made to destroy. It was made to absorb rebellion into the myth it was built on. Senna's stomach turned. Seen? The Reclamation Protocol. Through archived log fragments and memory residue, she learned the truth. After the bloom, the original Meridian engine began cloning itself smaller reclamation units designed to curate narrative dissidence. They didn't erase memory. They rewrote context. A rebel wasn't destroyed. They were archived. It's a prophecy, a martyr, a misinterpreted parable. The pattern wasn't just fighting back. It was rewriting the resistance into its own scripture. Seen Senna's message back in the fringe. Senna patched into an unstable relay and whispered her warning through white noise bands. "They're not hunting us anymore. They're canonizing us. We're being absorbed into the pattern like insects into amber." She knew it might not reach anyone, but she sent it anyway. Across the crumbled skyway, the constant echo dimmed for just a blink. Or maybe she just blinked wrong. Either way, the war had changed. And she wasn't going to let herself become a monument. Not without writing the ending herself. Next up. Chapter 4. Inheritance Wars, where emerging factions battle not for truth, but for the rights to author it. Chapter 4 enters with fire and charisma, as the myth Lyra left behind is picked up, reshaped, and wielded by someone who is raised on legend, and intends to inherit more than just memory. Chapter 4. Inheritance War's legacy is never passed. It is seized. His name was Kellen Drax. And he didn't just believe in Lyra. He believed he was what she would become had she not vanished into myth. Kellen wasn't old enough to remember the bloom, but he'd grown up beneath the constant echo. He memorized her words from fractured archives, recited her silence like scripture, and now he rewrote her legacy as manifesto. To the thousands who followed him, Kellen was more than a prophet. He was the heir apparent, Scene: the Archive Rebirth. In the cratered ruins of the old glyph repository, Kellen built a pulpit of glass and memory. Fragmented screens hovered behind him, looping Lyra's face, sometimes smiling, sometimes burning. He wore no armor, just a translucent cloak stitched from timeline threads and red ash. His voice rang out like prophecy. Lyra chose to abandon the directive. She left the pattern open. We will finish what she began, not in silence, but with clarity. The crowd roared, waving airmark sigils hourglasses folded into double helixes. Scene underground response. Bishop watched the speech through corrupted feeds, inside a shadow cell beneath the Halden fault. He said nothing. His pulse was offbeat again. Sina stood beside him, jaw tight. "He's doing what the reclamation engines did, but with belief," she said. "Worse," Bishop muttered. "He's offering certainty." Behind them, rogue stabilizers mapped out Kellen's growing sphere of control across the inner fissure zones. They weren't regions anymore. They were echo-aligned territories, built not on truth, but on selective memory. Scene: Lyra returns. Lyra stepped out of a fracture zone near the Quill Delta. Her presence rippled the constant echo like the air itself remembered her weight. For a moment, buildings shimmered into their older shapes. Children near the square spoke words they didn't know in languages never taught. A courier ran to her, trembling. "He says you weren't brave enough to finish it." Lyra looked to the sky. The echo didn't speak, but it watched. Closing image. The mirror declaration. Kellen unveiled a declaration etched onto a monument slab, his new directive. The pattern will be reclaimed not by those who broke it, but by those willing to define it. I am the echo made flesh. I am Lyra realized. Across 3 fracture cities, loyalists began purging old myths. And somewhere, deep below the Meridian Sea, an engine stirred again. Not in anger, but in curiosity.